The shocking top 10 worst trucks that nobody buys according to Consumer Reports. What's worse than buying a truck and having it break down on you? Today, we're counting down the absolute worst pickup trucks that buyers have overwhelmingly rejected. These aren't just disappointing vehicles. They're reliability nightmares that have cost owners thousands in repairs and countless hours of frustration. Today, we're diving into the dark side of the truck world, the machines that promised performance but delivered problems. These aren't just trucks that missed the mark. They're money pits, mechanical letdowns, and broken promises on four wheels. Backed by Consumer Reports data and real-world owner experiences, this list is packed with underpowered engines, weak transmissions, electrical gremlins, and resale values that drop like a rock. Did you or someone you know ever own one of these disappointments? What truck do you think deserves the top spot on this list? Tell us in the comments. We read them all. And if you're all about horsepower, chrome, and the sound of old-school muscle, hit that like button, share with your crew, and subscribe to Muscle Car Masters for more stories that rev up your memories. Let's roll. (2009 to 2013) Chevy Silverado 1500 Hybrid. All right, gearheads, let's roll it back to the late 2000s. Detroit was in the hot seat. Gas prices were shooting through the roof, emissions rules were tightening up, and everybody suddenly wanted a green ride. So what did GM do? They took a swing for the fences with a hybrid full-size pickup. Yeah, you heard that right, the Chevy Silverado 1500 Hybrid. Now, if you're like me and you grew up twisting wrenches on small blocks in your dad's garage, this thing felt like a science project gone sideways. They promised us Silverado muscle, with Prius manners. But let's be real, it just didn't bring the thunder. While the regular Silverado was tearing up the lots at over 300,000 units a year, the hybrid version, man, it couldn't even break 1,500 a year. That's not just a flop, that's a faceplant. Under the hood was this so-called two-mode hybrid system, co-developed with BMW and Chrysler. Sounds impressive, right? On paper, sure. But in the real world, it was dead weight. Added complexity, more stuff to break, and all it gave you was around a 33% boost in city mileage. Big whoop. Owners were ticked off jerky power delivery, batteries overheating, inverters crapping out and stranding people. And don't even get me started on that transmission. Couldn't decide if it wanted electric or gas. It just stuttered and shook like a rookie learning stick shift. It made even veteran truck guys white-knuckle the steering wheel. Oh, and it cost an extra $4,000 over the base model, but towed less. Yeah, let that sink in. You're paying more and hauling less. Some folks out there'll say, hey, it was ahead of its time. Maybe. But for us old-school truck guys who trust our ears more than some LCD display, this ride just didn't feel right. It had the badge, it had the size, but it didn't have the soul. 2003 to 2006 Subaru Baja. Let's take a drive back to the early 2000s, a time when automakers were out here trying to reinvent the wheel. And then came the Subaru Baja, a rig that tried so hard to be everything. It ended up being almost nothing. Now, for those of us who remember the glory days of the El Camino and the Ranchero, the Baja looked like a comeback attempt. But man, it missed the mark big time. Subaru took their rock-solid Outback wagon and chopped it into what a lot of folks jokingly called the Outback with a sawed-off tail. It wasn't really a car. It wasn't really a truck. It was like a Swiss Army knife that forgot the blade. Truck buyers thought it was too small and didn't have enough muscle. Car buyers didn't want a bed they couldn't even use. That 2.5-liter boxer engine, yeah, it was known for external head gasket leaks. left a lot of folks stuck with repair bills between $1,200 and $1,800. Not exactly cheap thrills. And that tiny bed in the back? Man, it could barely fit a cooler forget about a toolbox or a full set of tires. Even that midgate pass-through was more of a gimmick than a real solution. Cool in theory, but useless in the real world. Subaru thought they'd move 24,000 Bajas every year, but over 4 years, they only sold about 30,000 in total. Oof. While it's picked up a small cult following these days, most of us, especially the old-school gearheads, just stood there, scratched our heads. 2022 Toyota Tundra. For decades, Toyota's trucks had a rock-solid reputation, especially among the guys who lived through the gas crunch, the muscle car golden era, and the rise of the reliable Japanese imports. You could beat on an old Tacoma like it owed you money, and it'd still start the next morning. But then came the 2022 Toyota Tundra, and for the first time in memory, Toyota fumbled the ball, and hard. This was supposed to be the Tundra's big comeback new platform, modern tech, and a punchy 3.5-liter twin-turbo V6 to replace the old V8. But instead of bulletproof dependability, early buyers got stuck with check engine lights, turbo wastegate failures, and rear axle nuts that could loosen and shear off entirely. Consumer Reports ranked it dead last in full-size truck reliability, pulling its coveted recommended badge, something that hadn't happened to a Toyota truck in ages. The biggest shock? This wasn't just a hiccup, it shook Toyota's entire image. Longtime Toyota loyalists, especially older buyers who trusted the brand for decades, were left stunned. The new multi-link rear suspension was supposed to modernize the ride, but instead, it introduced new service headaches, while the giant 14-inch touchscreen often froze or rebooted mid-drive. If even Toyota can slip up, what does that say about today's auto industry? Did you ever think you'd see the day when a Tundra landed on a worst list? Let us know your thoughts and stories in the comments, especially if you owned an older Tundra that ran forever. 1993 to 1998, Toyota T100. Back in the early 90s, if you were chillin' at the local hardware store lot with your old F-150 or a worn-out C10, you might have spotted something kinda strange, a Toyota that looked like a full-size truck. That was the Toyota T100, and it was Toyota's first real swing at trying to win over the American truck crowd. But instead of rolling in with a knockout V8, they showed up with a 150 to 190 horsepower V6, and no extended cab. For folks used to the deep rumble of a 350 small block, or the torque of a Magnum V8, the T100 just didn't have the guts. Now, don't get me wrong, it wasn't a bad truck. It was reliable, it was well built, just like you'd expect from a Toyota. But it didn't speak the language of American muscle. No V8? No chance. It sat in this weird no-man's land bigger than a compact, but not quite full size, and buyers just didn't bite. By its final year, they only moved about 6,000 units in the U.S. Still, the T100 deserves a little nod of respect. It taught Toyota a tough but valuable lesson: you can't win over American truck fans without full-size power and presence. And that lesson? It paved the way for the first-gen Tundra, the one that finally showed up with a V8 and came to fight. 2002 Lincoln Blackwood. Ah, the early 2000s. That weird era when truck guys started swapping out chrome bumpers for chrome grills, and luxury pickups were just starting to creep onto the scene. But long before names like Platinum F-150 or Denali HD became top-shelf status symbols, there was one truck that tried to jump the gun: the Lincoln Blackwood. Ford took one look at Cadillac's Escalade and said, why not build a luxury truck? And so, in 2002, they dropped this ultra-glossy, all-black, $52,000 pickup. That forgot the most important part: of being a truck, being useful. The bed? Carpeted. Yeah, carpeted. And it was sealed shut under a power tonneau cover that turned the whole thing into a glorified trunk. You couldn't haul lumber. You couldn't toss in a set of slicks without worrying about scuffing the lining. No four-wheel drive, no color options, no variety, just black on black on black, like it was built for Batman but sold to the country club crowd. Ford only moved 3,383 of them before pulling the plug, and a lot of those sat unsold well into 2003. 2003 to 2006, Chevy SSR. If you walked into a Chevy dealership in the early 2000s, chances are your eyes landed on something that looked more like a Hot Wheels toy than a real pickup. That was the Chevy SSR, a retro-styled convertible truck that tried to channel the spirit of the late 40s Chevy advanced design pickups, but somehow got lost somewhere between cruiser and confusion. It had curves like a concept car and a power-folding hardtop, which was its signature feature and also its biggest headache. That roof mechanism? Oh man, it was known to glitch, jam, or misalign, leading to some seriously expensive and frustrating repairs. Now, the early SSRs came with a 5.3-liter V8, but with nearly 4,800 pounds of curb weight, it was more boulevard cruiser than burnout king. Eventually, Chevy stepped it up and dropped in the LS2 6.0-liter V8 from the Corvette. But by then, the damage was done. Sales peaked at just 9,000 units a year, and in total, only about 24,000 were ever built. The truck bed? Way too small to be useful. Too shallow for hauling anything serious. And the price tag? Around $42,000. Yeah, that's right. We're talking Corvette money without Corvette muscle. Still, for a certain kind of gearhead, the SSR was just weird enough to be wonderful. It wasn't practical, but man, it sure got people talking. – 2004 to 2012, GMC Canyon. Let's be honest, the first-gen GMC Canyon never really had a shot at glory. It came in during a time when mid-sized trucks were fading in popularity, and to make matters worse, it shared nearly everything with the Chevy Colorado, including its problems. For muscle car guys who grew up around the roar of V8s and trucks that could haul engines, transmissions, and half your neighbor's garage, the Canyon just didn't cut it. The biggest red flag? That 3.5-liter inline 5-cylinder engine, which always felt like a compromise. It had neither the fuel economy of a 4-cylinder nor the torque of a V6. And worse, it was plagued by cylinder head failures that led to misfires, rough idling, and costly repairs. Add in sensor and ignition switch issues, plus spotty electrical systems, and you had a truck that needed more diagnostics than a modern muscle tuner. GMC hoped to position the Canyon as a premium alternative in the midsize segment, but buyers weren't convinced. Sales dropped off a cliff, and by 2012, only about 2,200 were sold. Most dealerships barely stocked them, and when someone did buy one, it often felt like a second choice. Still, it had its charm. The styling was clean, and the ride was decent for its size, but for real truck guys, it felt more like a compact SUV with a bed. – 2004 to 2012, Chevy Colorado. If you walked into a Chevy dealership in the mid-2000s hoping to find a worthy successor to the legendary S10, you might have left shaking your head. The first-generation Chevy Colorado looked promising on the lot: modern styling, decent size, and a fresh nameplate. But under the skin, it was more placeholder than performer. For gearheads who still remember the growl of a ZR2 or the simplicity of an old C10, the Colorado felt more like an experiment than evolution. The biggest problem? that weird inline five-cylinder engine. Chevy tried to split the difference between fuel efficiency and power, and ended up delivering neither. It was prone to misfires, valve issues, and cylinder head defects, all while sounding like a vacuum cleaner on a bad day. Then came the electrical gremlins dash clusters that quit working, ignition switches that failed, and AC resistors that left you sweating in summer. Safety didn't fare much better. The brake light switch recall left many owners wondering if drivers behind them could even tell they were stopping. By the end of its run in 2012, the Colorado had earned a reputation for being the truck you bought if you couldn't find a Tacoma or were just loyal to the bow tie, no matter what. From 2005 to 2011, Dodge Dakota. The third-gen Dodge Dakota is one of those trucks that had so much potential but missed the mark in all the ways that matter to real drivers. For a lot of us who grew up hearing the raspy idle of a 346-pack or tearing up back roads in a Cuda, the Dakota name actually meant something back in the day. It was the go-to midsize that could still haul and wasn't afraid to rumble. But by 2005, Dodge gave it a new body, made it bigger than ever, and somehow it ended up doing less. It looked tough, sure, but the base 3.7-liter V6 sounded like it was chewing gravel, and it didn't have the muscle to back up the attitude. Even the optional 4.7-liter V8, which should have been the Dakota's saving grace, had a nasty habit of dropping valve seats, especially when overheated. And let's not forget the front suspension, which became a money pit of ball joints, tie rods, and wheel bearings. HVAC blower motors gave up early, leaving you freezing in winter or boiling in summer. By the time the final models rolled off the line in 2011, the truck felt ancient next to the competition. What once was a trailblazer became a bloated afterthought. 2001 to 2010, Ford Explorer Sport Trac. If you were at a Ford dealership in the early 2000s and spotted what looked like an Explorer with a mini pickup bed tacked on the back, chances are you were staring at the Ford Explorer Sport Trac, a vehicle that tried to be everything but didn't quite do anything well. It was born from an idea that could have worked: take America's best-selling SUV and give it a bed. But for those of us who grew up wrenching in the driveway, where form followed function and trucks pulled their weight, the Sport Trac always felt like a compromise with commitment issues. Early models were plagued with problems. The 5R55 transmission was known to wave the white flag before 70,000 miles, and the 4.0-liter SOHC-V6 had a notorious timing chain tensioner flaw that led to ugly, expensive failures. Interior bits broke often, from window regulators to door handles, and the ride was rough for something that was supposed to be an SUV truck hybrid. Sales told the story, from 70,000 in 2001 to just 5,000 in 2010. It had a short run for a reason. It was a vehicle built for a market that didn't quite exist yet. There you have it, 10 of the worst trucks that rolled off assembly lines and straight into frustration. From badge-engineered flops to underpowered wannabes, these pickups serve as cautionary tales for both gearheads and everyday buyers alike. But hey, maybe you owned one, maybe you survived one, or maybe you saw one stuck on the shoulder and thought, "Glad that's not mine." So now it's your turn. Which of these trucks burned you or surprised you? Do you think another model deserved to be on this list? We want your story in the comments, especially if you've got a garage memory or a highway horror tale to share. And if you love digging into the real history of American trucks and muscle machines, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to Muscle Car Masters. We're not just counting down, we're bringing the memories back, one engine at a time. See you in the next video.